So what time is it? It's time to have another episode of Adventures of Real Life Stories in this new market and the struggles that they are experiencing. So as you're jumping on this live, if you're watching on live, put hashtag live. If you're watching on replay, go ahead and drop in the comments hashtag replay. And today I'm joined here by my co-host and running partner, running mate, Daniela. Good morning, Daniela. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Today we're in the academy here, and we may be talking a little bit lower because we have a class full of real estate agents that are getting ready to join the industry, right? And it's still so inspiring to see that there are agents that are looking to come into the industry. But let's kick it off with what are some of those other struggles that agents in the trenches right now, those agents that are out in the field, that are out, putting on their best grind, hardware to get out there and do what they need to do. What are some of those struggles that you find that they're going through?
So one of the biggest struggles that I hear agents mentioning is when they start something new, they have a hard time keeping it up. So consistency is a huge problem that we see across the board because of whatever it is, right? Like it's a new thing. Maybe they don't see the results right away and then they start doubting it. But I do see that that's a problem.
So consistency is always a challenge. And I think that people think that there is like a secret formula for accomplishing consistency or becoming more consistent. And one of the things that I can say from personal experience is it's a daily awareness. It's a daily awareness. And that's why, you already know this, like systems are super important. You have to have a system. No one tells us that we're getting into real estate and we need to treat it like a business. Now, there's some people that get into real estate and they have that business mindset and they are very detailed oriented, very organized, so they immediately start putting systems in place. But one of the things that I like to follow is checklists, right? Because out of sight, out of mind. So we say, okay, so what are the things that are going to be money making activities? Those MMAs, money making activities. What are those MMAs that I have to implement for me to generate new business every day? Because if I just, if I have a car and I drive that car and every block I stop and I turn it off, how long is it going to take me to get anywhere? When you get in a car, you have an intent of where you're going. You have the intention of, getting there, but then you also have the premeditated steps to follow. Like I'm going to get in the car, I got to turn on the car, put it in drive. What's the direction I'm going to go in? How am I going to get to where I want to go to? How long is it going to take me? When should I be there by? And then we also know, using the analogy of a car, that, we could hit traffic, we could hit a bump in the road, we could, hit a fender bender. But at that moment, we are going to know how to maneuver and navigate through that. But the intention has to be there. So the best thing that I can say about consistency for agents is it's a methodology that you have to adapt. But the first thing you need to do is some reverse engineering and put systems in place. You have to have a checklist. Could you imagine getting in your car after work or after being in the office all day and you just sit there because, I forgot to put the key in the ignition and I forgot to turn it and I forgot to turn it on, or I forgot to put it in drive. So if you think about it, everything we do in life is really a step-by-step, a series of events. We get up in the morning, what's the first thing that we do? What's the second thing that we do? What's the third thing that we do? We show up in the office, what's the first thing we're supposed to do? What's the second thing we're supposed to do? Everything in life is a series of events. So in real estate, what is a series of events that's going to get you to have new business consistently and predictably? Because that's where we want to get to. We want to have consistent and predictable income.
And I think in hand, it goes with having clarity on where you want to go. So using that same analogy of A car. Okay, you get in a car, you turn it on, but what are you using for your GPS? Where's your destination? Where do you want to go to? So when you have a clear, concise, route, right, then that's when you can, start creating the momentum. You press the gas pedal, and then maybe sometimes you have to slow down or press the brakes and stop at a stop sign or whatever. But you know where you're going, and you're keeping the momentum going. So I think that's where a lot of agents struggle as well. I know one of the conversations we had in the mastermind, one of the agents mentioned her biggest struggle, and I think she's still struggling even after a year and a half later, is seeing this as a business.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, she
Oh,
mentioned
wow.
that. Yeah, that she was having a hard time seeing it as a business. She still had her employee mindset, which you have to, like you say, you have to deprogram that, right? But you know I think that's another thing, right? So if you don't see it as a business and you're not creating goals and whether it's daily goals, weekly goals, monthly goals, then that's supposed to be a part of your map, right? A part of your game plan. So that's something that she had mentioned, and I thought that was pretty interesting to hear, because it's true. A lot of us don't come into it with that business hat on, right?
Hmm. And a lot of people get into real estate and they come from the employee world. So it's hard to deprogram yourself to understanding that, hey, this is not a job. I need to treat it like a job. I mean, think about it. How have we treated our jobs in the past? I mean, we do whatever we're told to do. We meet deadlines. Whatever our boss tells us we have to accomplish, we accomplish it. How do we treat our jobs in the past? And we need to treat our real estate like a job. I think one of the biggest uh, difficulties is agents are not consistent because they're not treating it like a job. I mean, you had a time to show up, you had a time to take lunch, you had a time to call it a day, and if you had to work overtime or past business hours, and you did that. And so there is a lot of deprogramming that needs to be done. There's a lot of deprogramming that needs to take place. But again, it's all in what are the step by steps that you have to follow. Because there's everything in life is a step by step. And a lot of times we don't know what we don't know. So we have a lot of agents that are in the first level of the cycle of comprehension and the model of learning, which is unconscious incompetence. Like, I'm not even conscious that I don't know what I don't know. So that's why getting around people that are going to, lead you, guide you, show you, and being exposed to those things that you don't know. Like, oh, you didn't know you're supposed to treat this like a job? Like, you're supposed to show up. You're supposed to get up, shower, get ready, and show up. Hopefully shower.
Yeah, that's funny.
So that's a big challenge. So that's interesting that you say that this person, after a year and a half, was having a tough time seeing it as a job, as a business.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting too, because at this point it's like whatever you put in. I mean, and she's done business, right? So whatever you put in, that's when you get your that's the amount you're gonna get back. So that was pretty interesting as well. But I like what you mentioned about having that checklist. We were talking the other day about that checklist, and just the little acts that you put into your checklist, like trigger that dopamine in your brain that says, okay, yes, like I accomplished something,
Right.
I feel successful, and that is already setting yourself up for a good day. So the more you're going to continue to want to check off things in your list. So I think that's really, really important when you're trying to get better at being consistent with your task. Is that when I used to work at Geek Squad, we had a checklist as well. So at the end of the day, there was tasks that we were all responsible for doing, and if we didn't do it right, we don't check off on it, and then the next day we would hear it from someone, like, okay, this wasn't
So
supposed to
let's
get.
so let's break that down. So who would give you guys a checklist?
So it was already established by the Geek Squad manager.
Okay.
So that was something that, it was the checklist to not only end. So like say I was closing, right? So we had a closing checklist, and this checklist was meant to set up for the next day, right? So if there's something that I didn't do, now the shift in the morning is behind.
Okay.
So it's setting up, right? Setting down and then setting up for the next people to come in. So if I slacked and I didn't do something, now the next shift is going to, have one more thing to do.
A step back.
A step back, exactly.
And so what would be the consequences? Because I think, it's funny because everybody wants to get into real estate and be their own boss. But the question is, are you a good boss? Do you know how to keep yourself accountable? Well, I think the answer to that is none of us really know how to keep ourselves accountable. We need an accountability partner if we really want to be effective. But bottom line is, when I talk about being a good boss is, how would you act as a real boss? What would you expect from your people as a real boss? What would you do as a real boss? What would be your day-to-day method of operating if you were a real boss? So what would that look like?
Yeah, that's true. So, one of the consequences, well, in the beginning, right? If you start say you start to not do things, in that checklist, first is warnings, right? Hey, let's talk, what's going on?
Okay.
This is important for the operations and, making everything go smoothly, because in Geek Squad, we had appointments, right? And then the moment the store opens up, there might be appointments back to back. So, if I didn't do something, like say I didn't set up computers, right, that was supposed to be overnight, doing a reset, and the person is going to come first thing in the morning to pick up their computer. Now they can't pick up their computer. So now they're upset, and, they have to wait maybe another day or a few hours, or they have to come back. So, it's inconvenient to the customer. So, that's important. And, we had, of course, a survey and everything, and we had to keep a certain number and all of that, and yeah, we would get sat down and we would talk, and then eventually, if it continued, it would be a write-up, right? And then if it continued, then okay, they don't say it, but then they start removing you from the schedule little by little. They start cutting your hours. Like, it's serious. That's,
so there's consequences.
Yes.
So there's consequences. So now that you're in real estate, and obviously consistency is a huge challenge for a lot of agents, right? What are some of the consequences that you implement for yourself when, you fall off track, or when you are not, keeping yourself doing the step-by-steps that are going to lead you to the, because I think that's also important. So how do we reward ourselves, right? Or how do we develop the consequences that we need? Like, something's got to trigger our brain to look, this is what you got to do, if you want to get to where you say you want to go.
Yeah, so mine is like really cheesy, and I don't think it's is that much of a consequence. It's a consequence to me because it's important to me, but I have a huge sweet tooth. So I don't reward myself with something sweet. And if I do something and I feel accomplished, I give myself like a little treat. So, but I don't think that's like a huge consequence. I'll be the first one to say, like, I think I need a bigger consequence. But I think ultimately the biggest consequence is not getting paid, because what we don't do, right? We every day that we don't do something that we're supposed to do, prospecting for new business, adding to your pipeline and following up, you're setting yourself back. So I think that's ultimately necessarily the biggest consequence, but Coach Burrow mentioned having that mental subtraction where, you have to tell yourself something drastic. Like, if I don't do this today, I'm going to have to sell my car, or I'm going to have to, I don't know, kind of like these huge things, like I'm going to lose my house, or I'm going to have to sell a kidney. I don't know. But,
Right.
there's something where, it was drastic. And I think that's also a good thing that maybe I need to start implementing a little bit more in my consequences.
So we're talking about the power of consistency, right? And the struggle that agents being consistent have right now. And I think one of the number one triggers for inconsistency is not being around the right structure, not having the right, tribe or circle of people around you that are your running mates. Like, you and I started doing Agents in the Trenches. We said, let's start sending out the right message. Let's start looking for the agents that want to have conversations. Let's talk about the real raw realities of agents that are right now facing this new market and don't have the skill sets. And let's put things in place for us to create some joint ventures, for us to create some mutually beneficial winning opportunities. And that's exactly what we've been doing for the last 6 weeks. So, I find that it is super important for each and every one of us to find that winning circle for us. There is a winning circle, and each one of us needs to know what that winning circle looks like. And if we don't know what it looks like, then we need to start hunting for a winning circle, because when you are just a lone ranger and you are just out there like a lone wolf, I mean, you're bound to get lost. You're bound to lose your mojo. You're bound to, get down on yourself, frustrated. You're bound to get, disaligned and derailed. So that winning circle is super important. Like, you are my running mate, and I've said to you, listen, you got to hold me accountable. It doesn't really matter that, I'm the leader and you are my lead agent for the team. That's not even, it's not a ranking thing. It's a vulnerability thing. It's not a ranking. It's not, because, I'm the CEO, or, I've been doing this for so many more years than you, then you can't be my accountability partner. No, if you're committed to helping me and you're going to call me out and push me, drag me, pull me, do whatever it takes, right? And I'm giving you permission to do that, then, are you okay with me doing the same? And then that's when we have to have the mutually beneficial agreement that, yeah, hold me accountable. And the circle has everything to do with it, that winner's circle. So I love these masterminds like the one we did the other day, where we are hearing from different agents and we're hearing from different perspectives, what's causing them to slip and fall, what's causing them to get derailed, what's causing them to be still and stagnant. And I think that that's really important, is being around those circles where we can at least break out of the first level of incompetence, which is unconscious incompetence. I don't know what I don't know. So if I don't even know that by not doing the things that I need to do every day, I am sabotaging my future. Because a lot of times we think, well, it doesn't matter if I don't do this today, I'll do it tomorrow. Every day counts, right? And you've been a witness to that. What would you say about every day counting?
So, I mean, it's rough when you're in this business and you're 100% commission. And if you, like you're saying, if you don't have that person to hold you accountable, and you guys are holding each other accountable, when you start slacking off and you're your own boss, I mean, that is like that you're setting yourself up for failure, I believe. So it's hurting your pocket, and you don't realize it at those moments, but 30, 60, 90 days without a paycheck is painful, so I think every day does definitely count for sure, and you should be working towards your game plan, whatever it is, whatever goal you're trying to achieve.
Right. And the other day I was speaking with an agent, and he's part of a community that cold calls every single day. He's part of a community that cold calls every single day. And, that is so powerful. So We are a product of our communities, and working for those communities is going to help us stay more consistent. So I think this was a really, hot topic, and I'm curious to know how many other agents out there are struggling with consistency, and how many of them, are vulnerable enough to raise their hand and say, you know what, I need to become more consistent, you know, because let me tell you, being lazy and getting off track is so easy. I mean, laziness just sets in. I'll do it tomorrow. It's Thursday. The week is almost over. I'll just start on Monday, right? And then Monday something happens and you don't get started. And then the week goes by. And then I'll start next. And before you know it, listen, this is our last week of April. May is here. We are almost 6 months into the year. It's like, oh my God, wow. So anyway, I enjoyed that conversation with you today, Tania. Let's continue having conversations with agents and just pushing forward. So we will see you tomorrow on another episode of Agents in the Trenches.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has an amazing day.